Welcome, guys, to the watch list for the week of February 8th. So, we just finished a pretty volatile week, and looking at the weekly charts or the monthly charts of QQQ, you guys might not realize the extent of the volatility that the market is facing. All right, you guys can see on QQQ chart, we are only down 2% for the week, nothing crazy, and that includes a gap down, right? But obviously, that doesn't show the kind of movements that we have seen in software, the kind of movements that we saw in crypto last week, right? Obviously, gold and silver have been massively volatile. We are making the consolidation in gold that I had talked about once we had that initial bounce last week. So, overall, a pretty volatile week in many aspects. We'll start our analysis as usual from the larger time frames, see if anything has changed there, and then move to smaller time frames. So, all the way since early to mid Jan, I've been talking about how we are currently in a first consolidation on a monthly box after breaking out back in June. All right, so we broke out of this long consolidation, this area right here. And right now, what we are doing, so this was the consolidation, and right now, what we are doing is consolidating for the first time since that breakout. What are some other examples of such consolidations? This is the first consolidation after the massive breakout in December. We have back in 2020, this was the first consolidation after the breakout in May 2020, and so on. All right, so I had given some examples of such a consolidation before, and in most of the cases, in majority of the cases, we have another push for a second higher high in the trend. Okay, so we have our initial consolidation after the box breakout. So this was the box that broke out last year in June. This is the first consolidation, made the first higher high back in October, pulled back, made a higher low in November. As long as that higher low in November keeps holding, so this 583 area, as long as it keeps holding, the path of least resistance would be higher. Okay, I'm going to delete that 583 area and go back. So the path of least resistance is going to be higher for another push. That's been our base case scenario since Jan. And yes, on the smaller time frames, we have been volatile, but nothing has changed on the monthly charts. All right, let's go to smaller time frame. What about weekly charts? Has something changed there? Again, last week might have felt crazy, but if you guys see, we are still in the range that we carved out back in early November. So that 3 weeks of selling in November, we still are in that range. We still have a sideways consolidation on the weekly charts, and we are squeezing hard. So a move is coming, and as long as we hold above the November lows, that move is most likely going to be higher. All right, so on the weekly charts too, the situation is pretty clear. We have just been sideways. Let's move to the daily charts. How are things looking there? Well, I'm going to bring the drawings back soon, but just looking at this, you guys obviously know we are in a range on the weekly charts. On the daily charts, we had been holding above the 616 to 618 area for a long period. All right below this area is where we would see this kind of selling, and then more often than not, we would recover that. So I'm going to bring back the drawings now. And what you guys see is this area, 616 to 618. That's been the area where we found support back in this first in November, had a big sell-off, came back, found support in December, had another sell-off, came back, consolidated, tried another after the Greenland news, and then the most recent sell-off there, majority of which happened on Wednesday and Thursday. Now, we obviously know about the importance of this area, and bulls even saved this on Tuesday. So for people that are thinking is like, okay, one should manage risk and get out of all positions once this thing breaks. I get that on smaller time frames, but on larger time frames, on weekly charts, if nothing changes, you can't keep getting in and out again and again, or you will get chopped up. So for traders trading on the daily time frame, or traders who are short-term swing traders, obviously use that level as your risk gauge in this consolidation. But if you are a swing trader, you'll have to see QQQ or the indices break down on the larger time frames to make longer term decisions. All right, so that's my expectation or the context as we are still in this consolidation. Now, what's next from here? So we broke this support again last week moved lower on the hourly charts. That was a trend lower. Now, I had discussed this trend on Thursday as well as in the Friday's daily analysis. We had the first lower low after the breakdown on Tuesday, moved up for a lower high. As I have mentioned on the monthly charts, a second lower, second high, a second leg after that first consolidation usually happens. So we got the second lower low and second lower high. This is what I had mentioned in Friday's daily analysis, in Thursday's daily analysis, that if we go lower now, that's going to be the parabolic phase, which ends when we go above the highs of the previous hourly candle that happened on Thursday. So on Thursday, even though we closed the day weak, I was clear in the group how the downtrend is likely over. We will have a bounce to create a consolidation that will determine our next direction. So on the daily chart, that just looks like a bounce into the 9-day moving average. On the hourly charts, we have this. Now, can this bounce on Monday go a bit higher, go to the 615, 616 area? It could. Maybe we go all the way till here. I don't know where this bounce will end right now because we have just been a leg up. It will probably end around this 50 HMA or the 9-day moving average. So right around the 616, 618 area. Maybe that last push on Friday was the end. I don't know yet. But whenever this bounce ends, we will have a pullback to make a higher low. Now, if the initial bounce takes us above the 50 HMA and we make the higher low above the 50 HMA, this downtrend or the bearishness is gone. It's over. What if the initial bounce, it stops below the 50 HMA and we pull back? The strength of that pullback determines how much more weakness or volatility to expect. So if that pullback finds support around the 50, around the 9 or 21 HMA, all right, then we are still in a bullish scenario. We have made a higher low and this move lower has ended. We likely go back up. If the pullback next week on the hourly charts goes all the way down here, then we will have built a consolidation. All right, that would be neutral. If we break below the lows of Thursday, then we will have another leg lower and we go fill this gap and potentially risk testing that November lows. We already discussed on the larger time frames how those November lows are crucial. All right, if we are going to stay bullish, which in my opinion, we'll have one more leg up on monthly charts. So if we're going to stay bullish, we likely won't go for those November lows, but I'm just laying out all the possibilities. All right, so that's the context going into next week for QQQ. We will potentially get some pullback, whether that's right below the 50 HMA or above. I don't know. The strength of that pullback will determine if we are ready to be bullish or if we're going to have more volatility. If we are ready to be bullish, that pullback should not go lower than 600 area. Okay. And if it does not go lower than 600 area, then after making a higher low, we can go up and potentially try for a breakout from that monthly range. That's the context. Those are the levels for QQQ going into next week. That was the situation on hourly charts. Let's see how things are on daily charts. Obviously, right off the bat, we have a resistance area of this 921 MA cluster on the weekly chart. So yes, last week was the first time we closed below the 9 MA on the weekly charts in QQQ all the way since November. All right, that's important. That means loss of short-term momentum. Okay, personally, I don't like that. I would want QQQ to be back above the 9 MA soon. Because if it does not come back above the 9 MA next week, that means even on the larger time frame, momentum is losing out and we could have a much bigger pullback. All right, so that's something that's crucial for next week. I'm going to remove this small box. All right, so we have this right off the bat, we have this cluster of moving averages above 618 area on the weekly charts. We likely go back to the highs around 636 and then potentially break out. So that's your level on the weekly charts. That's important, 616 to 618. What about on the daily charts? Again, that level is going to be crucial, but we have another level right around the 610 area. And that's right around the area where we bounced after the Greenland news. And that will be of importance right off the bat in next week. So the 610 area, above that, we can go and test the 616 area, right around the 9-day moving average and the 50-day moving average. If we stay below this, then the next level of importance is obviously 600. So those are your levels on the daily charts. On the hourly charts, we'll discuss them on a day by day basis. Anyways, I already showed you guys the consolidation where I'm expecting 609 to 600 area is where I'm expecting that consolidation. Sorry. 609 to 594 area is where I'm expecting that consolidation. Ideally, the higher low does not even go below 600. All right, so those are your levels for hourly chart. I hope the context is clear. On the weekly chart, I mentioned the level above of 616 to 618. That's crucial. What about on the downside? On the downside, on the weekly charts at this point is probably going to be this entire level from 588 to 594. That entire cluster is your support on the weekly charts. If that cracks, we are getting a much deeper sell off all the way to 558 area. So that's your major level on the downside on weekly charts, similar to what we have as on the upside is 616 to 618. All right, so QQQ done. Let's move to SPY. SPY has obviously been the stronger index in the last few weeks, has not closed below the 9-week moving average since November.